All right, Mr. Chair, I am ready to begin when you are.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Corey Bond. I am the chair of the Ward 4 NAB. So on behalf of myself and my board members, welcome. We encourage you to speak. You can either come up here and use the podium if you're comfortable. If not, you can certainly stand up from your seat is fine. The only thing we do ask is that you give your name for the record, so we have a record of who, if they don't like our ideas, there's somebody that we can say, hey, it was his fault. So I would ask that you all stand and join me in the pledge, please. Mr. Johnson, since you returned to us, would you lead us, please?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Ms. Mayorka, welcome back. Would you do roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Corey Bond,
Present.
Victoria Luck, absent at this time. John White,
Present.
thank you. Benjamin Johnson,
Present.
thank you. Jared Souther,
Present.
thank you. And then Kathleen Egan, absent at this time. Councilmember Megan Ebert, absent at this time. And then staff liaison for the Ward 4 NAB, Abigail Mayorga present. And then I also have with us our council relations manager, Jenica Finnegan from the city of Reno. You have a quorum of the Ward 4 Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, folks, I'm going to, in line with the agenda, I'm going to go to A3. This is public comment. As I said before, you can come here, you can stand, either one. You have 3 minutes, so if you would like, I will leave it to you, Ms. Mayorka.
Yes.
And I'm going to sit down.
All right, perfect. Before we begin public comment, members of the public may hear, observe, and provide public comment virtually by registering through the following links, which can be found on reno.gov/meetings. And the link is as follows: https://US06WEB _VHD_0I_0W. It should be noted for those in attendance that comments are to be addressed to the board as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the agenda. The board may not take action upon any matter not agendized on today's agenda. When you are called for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name and you will be afforded 3 minutes. At this time, I haven't received any public comment from the audience. If you would like to give public comment at this time, I ask you to come forward. Perfect. Seeing none. And then if you're a participant on Zoom and would like to give public comment, please raise your hand at this time and I will allow you to speak. I will give you a second. If you're looking to give public comment, you'll go to the bottom bar and you'll hit raise your hand. All right, none at this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go to A4, approval of the agenda. I would ask for a motion.
Jared Souther, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as it is.
Okay,
John White, second.
okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing none. Okay. See tonight. Is there only one, Abigail?
Yes, no
Okay.
minutes for this time. Yes.
Okay, so with that, we are down to A5 and I, as always, Ms. Mayorka, you usually do A5 and A6. So if you're going to, take it away, please.
Yes, so Councilmember Ebert is not here today, but she did want to give me some updates to give you. The first being is that we will not be having a December NAB for the holidays. It falls on the week of the holiday, so we will be taking that one off, and that's generally what we do. So our next meeting will be January 18th of 2024. Here, 6 p.m. North Valleys. So I hope to see you guys in the new year. In the meantime, if there are anything that comes up, please feel free to reach out to me. And we are still looking for Ward 4 NAB members. We would like to grow and expand. So if you have anyone that is interested or know of anyone, please plug it and let them know that we are taking applications. If you need access to the application or more information, I can provide that to you after the NAB. And then I did want to give one update regarding US 395, and some of you may have seen this update if you're signed up for the newsletters. So let me pull it up real quick. So this was sent out on November 8th, so about a week ago, and let me share with my participants on Zoom. Perfect. So it was just kind of a PSA regarding the multi-year improvements that we kind of discussed with NDOT and RTC at our last meeting, and it kind of goes in depth regarding the updates and what's coming and just a kind of overview of everything. I wanted to highlight this portion right here, which kind of tells the public with all the different changes that are happening, how to stay up to date with alerts. So the first one is to subscribe to their text message list, text North Valleys at this phone number here. And that will allow you to get construction text alerts directly to your mobile device. The second one is if there are problems with the project or you want more information, the project hotline is also here. And that is obviously specific for the 395. It's not just NDOT general number, it's for this project. And then as always, this website was provided last meeting, but the 395northvalleys.com is for project information regarding it. And again, status and updates and like stuff like that. And then just more information regarding the timeline and more contacts as well. So Twitter, if you're on social media, or additional highway information with NDOT. So I just wanted to share that with you guys if you didn't receive the update, but this would be a good way to stay up to date. And then that's all I had for council and staff liaison reports.
Okay. Welcome, Ms. Egan.
North Valley traffic.
Yes, yes, but we are happy to have you, so welcome. Okay, with that, we will move to business items. B1, board and commission conduct, decorum, and records training by City of Reno staff. Ladies, take it away, please.
Yes, and then we will actually have Donnie LeCue, Mr. Clerk, give the presentation today. Let me share
Spot to give it from.
wherever you like, yes. And then Leah, if you can't hear me or you need us to speak louder, please let me know. I know that you have access to unmute via Zoom.
Okay, thank you so much for having me, everybody. Sorry, I'm not the real city clerk. I'm the substitute, the chief deputy city clerk. My name is Donnie LeCue. Thanks for having us here today. So it's a really good time to kind of have these discussions and to talk about boards and commission decorum and process training. One of the big reasons is we have a lot of new members to these boards. The NABs got hit pretty hard when COVID came through, and we're still sort of recovering from that. Obviously, it sounds like still recruiting some people for this board. So having a lot of new members on board, it is a good time to kind of come together and just revisit the different processes that we use in terms of open meeting law, and the importance of this board, why we do what we do. So with that, is there a clicker or?
I got you.
You got me, okay. So just an overview of our training today. We're going to talk a little bit about the neighborhood advisory boards, what they do, why they're important, the rules that govern us, Robert's Rules of Order, and open meeting law, and then a few other provisions. So first talk about the neighborhood advisory boards. Okay, so we have currently 5 neighborhood advisory boards. There's 1 for each ward. Of course, there is soon to be 6 because we adopted a 6th ward. So we will have 6 neighborhood advisory boards soon. They are regulated by Resolution 8342. And that also regulates the terms of the members, the number of members that are on there. We follow NRS 241, which addresses open meeting law, and Robert's Rules of Order as well. These are rules of conduct within meetings that are adopted by the state of Nevada. So whether or not you're going to the legislature, the Board of County Commission, City Council, or a neighborhood advisory board, we do follow those same rules. Chapter 2.2 in the Reno City Charter covers the Code of Ethics for public officials. And finally, just to touch on sort of the importance of this board and what the point of it is to create that dialogue and to create that connection between the constituents of our city and the policymakers, the city council. So talk a little more about that. So again, the whole point of this is to facilitate that communication. The city council obviously are the ones who make those policy decisions and the big action plans. And in order for them to do that, it's important, of course, that they have their own expertise, the advice from staff members at the city of Reno. But at the same time, in order to get an actual sense of the issues within a community and what it means to have a good life there, what improvements we can make, they do rely on that communication from their constituents. So you are, of course, sort of that gateway to the city council for the constituents. Of course, they come and talk to you and give comments on things, and then you give your recommendations to the city council. So again, the most important thing here is just that it provides a voice of citizens to city council, and in this case, specific to this area. So talk a little bit about the rules of order that we follow. Robert's Rules of Order, again, these are followed by the state of Nevada, and this basically describes the decision-making process. How do you make a decision when you have a body of people and maybe they feel differently about an issue? So of course, we follow those motion guidelines. After any questions are asked, if there's a staff presentation, one of the members would then take the floor to make a motion. It is seconded by a second board member. At that point, there could be deliberation or discussion if you prefer. And then from there, it is voted upon. So I already heard you make them at the beginning of this meeting. Everybody said their name before they made the motions. It was perfect. So a little bit on the conduct of efficient meetings. So we'll talk a little bit about the board members and then the members of the public as well. So first, starting with the board members, again, identify your name before you're speaking, whether you're making a motion or making a comment. That helps us to clarify for the record who is making those comments. And especially when specific actions are made, being able to go back to that record and say this action was taken because it was passed this way and this is how each person voted. We need to make sure all of that is very accurate for the record. A lot of meetings too, the minutes for them are done based on recordings. It's not like the old days where we had someone with a typewriter in the corner typing everything. So having been on that side of things, it makes it a lot easier when people clarify who is talking. So in addition to that, we ask members not to interrupt one another and not to speak unless recognized by the chair. Obviously, I know a lot of issues we have a lot of maybe different opinions on and a lot to say about them. What we want to avoid are people talking over each other. Otherwise, we would never get to the end of things. And so we follow that sort of talking stick principle. We don't use an actual stick, but if you have the stick in your hand, that's when you talk. But the point is that there is someone who has the floor at every moment. And so we recognize that, not to interrupt them. And I know it is tempting sometimes. Somebody may be talking and you have an interjection that you think maybe even help their point, but to make that interjection, even if it's just for 30 seconds, we're really taking away that person's time in order to do that. So we follow and respect those rules. We also ask if you read all materials in advance of the meeting, come prepared to discuss the items on the agenda. Obviously, the idea isn't to hear about issues when you get to the meeting, but look over the material that you provided prior to it, digest it. That way, when you come here, you can have a deliberation and discussion about it and make decisions on it if need be. Moving to the members of the public, we ask the same thing when you are speaking. Please identify yourself before speaking. One of the important reasons for this is a lot of times someone will make a public comment. A city official may hear and then they want to follow up with you. So that's one reason in which it's important to know who is talking. And again, an accurate record as well. We want to make sure when we put these comments in and they're recorded that we're acknowledging who made those comments too. Again, in terms of interrupting, just asking that members of the public not interrupt presentations or board members for those same reasons. There is a period of time in which the public is allocated to speak and give public comments, just like the board members, and we all respect each other there. So there are 2 designated opportunities on each agenda for public comment. You have the opening public comment period and then a period at the end. The chair at their discretion may also choose to hear public comments on other items throughout the agenda. And then finally, we just ask to limit side discussions. That can be different kind of depending on the setting in the room. But we know a lot of times people might come to meetings to hear one item, but they got to stay for the whole thing and it's 3 hours, or we get passionate about the things that are being talked about. It's sometimes hard to see from when you're sitting in the audience, how distracting that can be to others, and especially the board members who are up there to conduct business. So we ask for that same decorum of our audience members. So just a few formalities to talk about. Number one, we don't use first names when we are conducting these public meetings. We use our titles. And so on a board like this, you of course have your chair, the officer who's presiding over the meeting. The person who may be presiding in their place would be referred to as the chairperson. You could call them Mr. or Madam Chair, Mr. Madam Chairperson. And that's essentially everyone else would be referred to as members. So member E again, member Souther. But the most important thing is not using first names, acknowledging our titles during these meetings. And then a few other things. So I think I kind of just covered this, I'm sorry, but yes, use the titles in the meetings. All right, and so you're probably very familiar with this. Is kind of the standard template for how we run public meetings. But essentially, we start by acknowledging that the meeting has been called to order. We take roll call. Important part about that is to make sure that we do have a quorum of members present, and we do have record of who those members are. We have the public comment period, approval of minutes from the previous meetings. Then we conduct business, talk about any future items, and then adjourn the meeting. So the process that I think you have already been following. So obtaining the floor, again, we want to use that principle of there is a person being acknowledged talking at any given time. It is, like I said before, it is tempting sometimes to kind of jump in there. I know as someone who has run the speaker timer clock, this can especially be difficult, not knowing exactly who is talking. If one person's talking and another one starts talking in the middle, again, it is their time that's being taken away. So we want to acknowledge if we are speaking that we do have the floor. If you are wishing to speak, then you would want to be granted the floor by the chairperson and have that acknowledgement. Making a motion, I think you are familiar with this process. Again, I know I recapped it in the beginning, but essentially someone makes the motion, another member would second the motion. You might have deliberation or discussion of the motion at that point, and then voting upon it. So one thing that's important is that the motion should be clear and well thought out, whatever it is. And a lot of times you might be taking action on something and there's already a staff recommendation as far as how we should move forward. In that case, it might be appropriate to say, I move to approve the staff recommendation. At other times though, maybe you make a decision that there's not a recommendation on the table or a separate from that or some version of that. So what you want to avoid is you have a lot of discussion about something, and then after 15 minutes of discussion with different opinions, someone says, I make a motion to approve, and then you vote on it and move forward. It is the chairperson's responsibility to make sure that it is clear, whatever it is that we're actually voting on. So if you are making a motion for something, just make sure that is clear what action that you're motioning that we should take. Okay, let's talk a little bit about open meeting law. Were we just on that slide?
No.
Perfect. Okay, so we follow NRS 241.010, which talks about open meeting law. And the primary principle of open meeting law is that it should be just that. It should be an open meeting. So the point of these meetings, of course, this is the people's business that we are conducting. We're sort of the go-between here. Because it is their business, it's important that they understand prior to discussion or action what it is that you're going to be talking about. And that's why we agendize items. That's why we stick to items on the agenda. But we want to always make sure that that's clear. And internally, when we create an agenda, that's something that we look at. We want to make sure the descriptor of whatever that item is, that it is clear to a member of the public. And we ask ourselves that if I were a member of the public reading this agenda item, would I understand what is being talked about or what action is being taken today? So we make sure that's clear. And again, the whole point is to be able to communicate to the public what you're going to be talking about, what you may be taking action on, so that they can give their input appropriately if they see fit. Agenda. So agendas we have before the meeting, a couple points on that. So action may be only taken on an agenda item that is designated for possible action. So that's one thing we mark on the agenda. If we're actually taking action on an item, we would indicate that on the agenda. Now, this presentation, for example, would not be an action item. You're not voting on anything today based on my conversation. This is simply informational. But those items you are actually going to take action on, we want to make sure that that's clearly labeled for the public so they understand the actions being taken, and obviously there will be an outcome to that. We should keep the discussion limited to the scope of the agenda item. This is very important too, and it's easy sometimes to be led astray from, but sometimes we may start talking about a subject and that brings up another concern or another subject, and all of a sudden we're talking about that other thing. The problem with talking about that other thing is you didn't tell the public ahead of time that you're going to talk about that other thing. And so it is important that we stick to the agenda. In city council meetings, the city attorney might step in if we get off track and remind us to stick to the topic at hand. So again, that would be a responsibility, just stick to the items that are on the agenda and not to go astray. And then next slide. Okay, so quorum. Quorum is the majority of members present. So you currently have 6 members appointed. That would be a total of 4. So it's not based on the total number of seats. You have 11 seats available. So that doesn't mean you need 6 people to make a quorum. It's based on the current number of appointments you have. So for this board, 4 would be a quorum. A little bit on development projects. The city council are the ones who make those decisions on whether or not to move a development project forward. So those decisions wouldn't be made at the neighborhood advisory boards. However, you are relied on to make recommendations to council about those projects. So serial communication is something that we wanted to point out. Serial communication would refer to communication among board members that is electronic. It could be text messages, it could be email. But the thing to keep in mind is just because it is electronic, that doesn't mean that you might not be forming a quorum. So if one member from this body, for example, were to start a text message chain with 3 other members on the body talking about something policy related, what you should do about something, you have formed a quorum in that case, which is a violation of open meeting law. So at the city, our practice is when staff is reaching out to you, we try to do that individually. One of the reasons that we do that, even if we're communicating the same information, is to avoid that. So keep that in mind. Just because it's through text message or an email chain, you can still be developing a quorum through those processes, even if it's not in person. The other term I want to mention is a walking quorum. So this is when a quorum might be formed outside of a setting that has been publicly noticed. There are some exceptions to this too, but this is essentially meant for if there were, in your case, like 4 members who met outside of a meeting, met in any process that has not been publicly noticed, to discuss policy, to talk about what you might do in the future, to try to get votes to turn a certain way before you actually come here and vote upon it. Again, you would have formed a quorum through that process. And it was not publicly noticed, so the public doesn't have that open, transparent process to that. So that's something we want to avoid. One question a lot of people ask is like, what if we're all at a party together? There is an exception to that. If you are invited to a social event, even if you are all there, that is okay, as long as there's no policy matters that are actually discussed. And then a little bit on public comment. As we talked about, there's 2 periods for that, for the public. We recommend the NABs take public comment on any issue that the NAB is advising the city on. So again, the chair has that discretion to allow public comment on other items. And that is typically the process that the city council follows, and that we encourage the neighborhood advisory boards to follow as well. One very important point is that we never restrict someone's public comments based on a difference of opinion. During the public comment period, that is their time. We may not like what they say, we may disagree with what they say, but that is their time, and they have absolutely every right to their opinion and to say what they feel they need to say. And so we absolutely cannot restrict public comments just based on a difference of opinion. There are some decorum measures in city charter, just like there are for board members, about how we conduct ourselves. So that doesn't, if it doesn't mean that the chair is out of line for issuing a warning if someone is vulgar or abusive up there. But the main point is that we want to never shut down someone's opinion just because a member or the members as a whole may disagree with it. That is their time, it is their opinion, and this is a forum for them to openly express it. A few other provisions. So the agenda that we post prior to these meetings, by law, we post it by 9 a.m., 3 days prior to the meeting taking place. So again, that is for the public to kind of have plenty of time to see what is being talked about, to weigh in whether or not they have input to give on that and to prepare for that. No items may be added to the agenda. And I think based on what we talked about, you can probably guess why, but we don't talk about things that we haven't told the public that we're going to talk about. So we can't come here and then if you're here, say, oh, I want to talk about this other thing. Again, we haven't had time to make the public aware through that process that we're going to talk about that. So we can only talk about items that are on the agenda. There is a process to take items off the agenda if need be. The minutes, of course, are public records that we post and everyone has access to. This is one of our more important points tonight too, is that correspondence provided in board or commissioner capacity could be subject to a public records request. So when you are serving in a public office, a public capacity, the public has every right to have access to any notes you may have taken. They could submit a public records request, for example, for the notes that a board member was taking during a meeting, and my team would reach out to you and ask for those. So a couple other notes on that too. That applies to text messages, emails, really any way in which you can create a record. The public has rights to that if it is done in your official capacity. So the rule that we like to tell people to follow is if you wouldn't say it to your grandmother and you don't want it on the front page of the RGJ, you shouldn't say it. Everything is a record. The public has the right to that information. So whenever you're creating records in whatever way, please keep that in mind. And that is it. So I am open to any questions you may have.
Okay, first of all, from my dais, anybody?
Sure, thank you. Jared Souther for the record. One thing that comes up in our NAB is that we get the agenda, but we don't get the agenda materials prior to the meeting. And it would be a nice benefit to have that enhancement, having the deck given to us. Would it be possible to receive it by email, or does it have to be posted to the public as well? And that's why we don't get it until we arrive to the meeting.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously we work with different applicants, and as you guys see, that changes by the time that we get to the NAB, whether they do come or don't come. So our staff is working to track those presentations, whatever the materials are. So generally it depends. Sometimes we've gotten them before, so I do send those to you guys before, and then sometimes they don't. So it's very wishy-washy depending on what project that is or who is in charge of the project or the communication that is given. Sometimes they don't have a presentation, so we don't have those materials. But then after the meeting, all the stuff that we consolidate and the meeting minutes that are approved and the materials that you get will be posted after. So I understand that there's, for example, with the city council, they obviously have a lengthy agenda and they have that all planned out. Unfortunately, the NABs aren't necessarily like that. Things come and go. So we do try our best to provide that information.
Yeah.
It's not always consistent. And unfortunately, it's not always up to
Yeah.
us. Yes.
But anything that is available, could it be sent out like the day of?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Just to give us the opportunity to be
Yeah.
prepared for the meeting.
Mhm.
And just to note on that, the public noticing requirements are topical in that regard. So yes, we do our best to try to get the information out there. Obviously, the most important thing is we're making sure that we tell them what we're going to be talking.
One enhancement I think would be great for us is having an opportunity to have a better tool for commenting on agenda items, because we have to go in and manually put in, hey, this is the item number, this is the project or whatever. It'd be nice to have like a link saying, here's the agenda item, and click on it and go straight to that project and be able to give feedback on it. One question I did have to close is, what is the retention policy for documents if we're writing notes? Like, how much time do we have to hold on to that? Because I go home and sit that packet aside in the shredder sometimes, so like.
And that does happen. So this is what we would recommend. If you have text messages, anything like that, we would recommend that you retain a copy of it. We understand a lot of people clear their emails, they clear their text messages. So sometimes what people will do, if you have a text message conversation or whatever, screenshot it, send it to your liaison, so they have a record of it. So I would say if you create a record, make sure it's kept in some way, even if you are passing that along to someone else. But it is best practice to make sure that any record that we create, that we have it available for the public.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Sure, I have a question. Ben Johnson for the record. I just wanted to just kind of get more information about the records request. And that's only, we only have to keep those records for when we're doing anything for the board, right? And so there's not, if I'm sending a text message while I'm sitting here, those are what I'd have to provide if requested, or is it at any point in time in my life, if I'm sending a text message to my wife, I have to provide that? Is that what that means, or no?
So it could be. So you're talking about like using your personal device?
Yes,
too?
yes.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and it is possible. And what it comes down to is what the nature of the conversation is. The way it would work if somebody said, let's say somebody saw you sending text messages during a meeting, and they said, we can't assume 100% that it was in your board capacity. You may have been texting your wife. So our staff would reach out to you and say, this is the request. And then you would then reply, if there was no record, you would reply with an affidavit stating that. And in the case where it was not regarding business or anything in your capacity as a board member, then that wouldn't apply to that.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're not entitled to your conversations with your wife.
Got it.
Go ahead, Ms. Egan.
Kathleen Egan for the record. Who does our timekeeping here when there's public comment or for board members?
Yeah, so generally we don't, right? Because it never is an issue. For most of the boards, we don't, for example, at the city council meetings, so the clerks do the 3 minutes for each council member. We don't do that for you all because it doesn't get to that point, or hasn't gotten to that point, but that's kind of why we had.
It has a
Mr.
couple of times,
Yeah.
though. That's a problem where someone doesn't know. We say 3 minutes
Mhm.
and then they don't know.
You mean the public commenters?
Yes.
No, we always have 3 minutes for the public commenters.
How do you then
I-
give them a warning, like when there's like when we do Toastmasters, it's like you 30 seconds before, you get a warning. So because people, when they're emotional and they're not used to standing up and talking in public,
Mhm.
they don't have a sense of where they're at. Because I've never seen anyone been told your time's up, but I know there's people that have been over, but we're being respectful,
Correct.
trying to let someone finish their
Finish it
thought.
off. Yeah.
Finish their thought. So we don't need to be,
3 minutes, correct.
military about it,
Mhm.
but that's what I was.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
That's why there's 2 of us, to keep the time going. For the members, again, we don't usually do that for you guys because it doesn't get to that point.
Yeah.
As the city council, they have certain agenda items that they all need to get through. So we're not there for our members, but we do it for the public.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I
Explore getting a
Mhm.
A little
for the-
time clock,
For the,
yeah.
for the meeting boxes.
like, we used to have a little flag, like you have a 30-second warning, so the person who was speaking could then kind of wrap up
Yeah.
their final
Mhm.
thought. I don't know if other NABs do that or whatever. Second, question on item number C that we have, where we have board members give reports. Sometimes someone will have gone to a planning commission meeting, or someone has an idea that they want to bring up as a future agenda item. And sometimes those discussions have been pretty kind of in depth, and then the public come as well. But it's not announced, it's not an action item. Well, when we ask for an agenda, but we haven't discussed it in advance. So I don't know what, like, crossing the line of when you'd consider it something that we should have notified the public in advance. I guess if we ever cross that line, you would warn us and stop us?
Yeah.
On that?
Yeah, definitely. So,
Okay.
yeah, so the boards and announcements is really, it's open. It's open to, hi, there's this thing at my school, at my kid's school or whatever. So it's general for whatever you guys think is important to let the public know. It's similar to my staff report, right? Like I can bring up, this is what's happening at the city, or this is a great opportunity for you guys to go for the ward. So that is for C. For D items, I think we do get into it. That's how we got NDOT and RTC and like, this is why, but I just take the bulk of, you want this, and I understand that you're passionate. So you say whatever follows after that. But I don't, in my capacity, I don't feel like you guys go off board, but if you do, then we'll rein you back
You'll
in.
rein us
Yes, rein you back in. And I think this helps to give you guys guidelines in those regards as to, well, I don't know for future agenda items, if you have anything else that would help in the regards of like the parameters of what that is, but it's open, right? Like,
And I think that's the main point, is that there is a period for that open discussion. And so when we're talking about going off into other topics, it is more when you are talking about a specific agenda item and we may go off into something else. But that period, it would be appropriate to kind of bring up those topics. Obviously, we're not taking any action there. It would need to be agendized before you do that.
And final one, sir. Chair, sir. What I haven't seen is our board specifically make a motion for a recommendation for any of the items to recommend to our city council person who represents us. How do we start doing that? Do we need to have, like, whoever is the current chair say, do we have a motion? Or at that time after that development piece, so they want to change the zoning on this, would it then be when the chair asks for conversation from the dais that one of us could then say a motion to approve or
yeah, we don't
Approve.
recommend or we do recommend.
right, because that, I believe that would be a stronger in the record, in the minutes, and then a clear for any council person we have, they would then have that fact of to go to the council when the council's voting and tell those 5 other council people, my constituents, voted on this. This is a recommendation to approve or deny. I think that would help give a weight to carry our voice, because that's where I think the disconnect is. How does our voice carry to our one council person? How does that then get to the 5 others that we need to work on that? So that's something that we can direct on ourselves to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, yeah, I was like, yes. Obviously, you guys provide your public comment, and that gets taken for each development. And then the forms that they submit also get submitted to the planner that it's assigned to it. But in cases where you guys are looking to make a case.
An actual
that would-
vote,
Yes.
Not just our comments.
Yeah, but
collective
it's like a recommendation based, the ward board NAB recommends XYZ, and then continues to, you go one by one, you say yes, yay or nay.
And then any of us could then follow up on that city council meeting. I know Corey goes to a lot, Jared goes to a
Mhm.
lot, where either public comment or in person, they can say as a representative on this date, we voted our NAB, we listened to a lot, our public, and we voted, and then that could.
I would say
layer on.
recommended, since it.
Yeah, recommended.
Yes.
Recommended. That might help us layer on to get people seeing that they just don't come here to the library and then it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's.
That's something
I think we could,
Yeah.
we can definitely look into it. I would like to take a look at the resolution a little bit more closely to, make sure we're in the parameters.
Process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it might be changing. So at this time for the developments, it says discussion item only, so it might be changing that verbiage or adding a step or something like that, if it is possible.
Thank you.
Yes, great questions.
John, anything?
John White for record. Yeah, we used to do generally a poll of all the members, and we turn in on the document, official recommendation of particular changes or improvements. Besides what the developer that was here would hear. So I don't know when that changed. I mean, I'm talking like 25 some years ago, we were doing that. So I don't know if that's still a possibility. Sounded like it wasn't for some of the information about not taking recommendations from because we're an informal board on the whole. We're not a official legal status board for that.
Right, yeah. Do you mean what I was talking about before with the kind of talking outside of the meeting or?
That and or recommendations. It said specifically in there earlier, you could not to make recommendations from this level.
Yeah, if you had that communication where you're discussing which way you should go on a specific item, and you had a quorum of the body, then you could be in violation of open meeting law. So it's definitely something to keep in mind.
Hey, everybody on the dais, okay? Okay, any public thoughts? Now's the time if you have any comment. Seeing none,
Any participants on Zoom would like to give comment? If so, raise your hand at this time. Again, to raise your hand, you'll go to the bottom of the Zoom and hit the raise hand symbol. Seeing none at this time, Mr. Chair.
okay. Sir, thank you for coming and thank you for your information.
Thank you for having me, and either myself or the city clerk, Mickey Huntsman, if you have any questions or if you wanted to meet with her in the future, she's more than happy to. So please reach out to our office, and thanks for everything you do.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Donnie. Mr. Clerk.
Are you ready, Ms.
Yes.
Abigail? Okay, with that, we are going to move to item B2-1, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And we do have our presenters today.
Good.
Yeah, you're good.
Hello, everybody. My name is Josh Hindo. I work with Kinley Horn, Civil Engineering. We're here to represent for a proposed project in. So the location is in North Reno, as I said, with access off of Stead Boulevard, just south of the freeway. The project station with a convenience store, as well as a drive-through Subway or other fast food restaurant. We're still working through the details on that. The site is located right off the freeway, which makes it a great spot for high-speed diesel fueling with the truck drivers that come off the freeway, as well as for the community members, regular passenger vehicles as well. Just a quick overview of the zoning and a little bit of background on the project. The zoning is mixed use suburban. There was a previous conditional use permit around a year ago that proposed a similar site. The layout has changed a bit, and we've also now are requesting 24-hour use. So the conditions of, I apologize, the conditional use permit from last year was applied for with the requests of major crossing of a major drainage way, fills greater than 10 feet, gas station use and on the mixed use suburban use, and drive-through fast food facility. Our request as an amendment to that conditional use permit would be for hours of operation between 11 and 6, so 24-hour use. And as well as a drive-through facility, fast food service in the mixed use district. As you can see, and on this plan here, there's definitely appears to be like a good spot for gas station use with the surrounding developments, whether they're existing or what would be allowed in the zonings. Adjacent to the site, we have the Amazon facility that's just over a few years old. There's a lot of industrial use in the area, so a lot of truck traffic that would be stopping by the site to get diesel fuel, as well as a little bit of residential on the north side, and that is it on that side. There's some photos for the site, showing some of the existing topography and existing conditions. A little bit on the site design, without getting into too much detail, there's access off of Stead Boulevard. The building in the middle consists of a convenience store and a fast food restaurant with a drive-through. The drive-through is on the south end of the building. On the back side of the building is the high-speed diesel fueling area. And so, with the trucks coming in, oftentimes truck drivers drive through the night. And so portion of the request of this permit is for 24-hour use to allow for those truck drivers to stop by, grab a Snickers bar or a drink while they're filling up their gas. Here's a preliminary landscape plan showing a lot of the proposed landscaping to help make the site a little bit prettier. This is a preliminary rendering of what the building will look like. And a preliminary rendering of the fuel canopy that'll be in the front of the building, the standard fueling area. With that, I'd like to say thank you and then see if anybody have any questions on the project.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your presentation. John?
Yeah, John White for the board. You're gonna work with this in conjunction with, who is RTC on Stead Boulevard to make any improvements from the freeway southbound exit into that area, or, right, because that is a one way, and they all gotta stop waiting for Stead Boulevard to clear before they can go across or onto the freeway. It's congested as it is, even in the least of times.
Yeah, so
When all the vans come through, it's a big mess.
yeah, so part of the process is an encroachment permit with NDOT. That's NDOT right of way in that area of Stead Boulevard. So we're working with them. We've submitted a traffic study for the conditional use permit, but ultimately to be approved by NDOT to recommend changes to the intersection that would bring it to a higher level of service. So
Would that be
what we'll-
completed before you opened or after you opened?
Correct. Typically it's before it's open.
All right,
Yeah.
that's good. Now, it would be a relief for the area, because at one time I went off to Red Rock to get some fuel. I was on my motorcycle and there were a dozen Amazon vans and I didn't get the connection till I got there and couldn't get to a pump.
Yeah.
Because it literally is swarmed by the Amazon and there's no way to get fuel. I had to leave
Mhm.
because they're.
Yeah, on the south side of the freeway there in that area, there's not any other gas stations. So I think it's a good spot for one, especially on, southbound 395.
Hey, anybody?
Jared Souther, same question, but want to go a little bit deeper on that. One entrance on Stead Boulevard, would left turns be allowed across Stead Boulevard, and would there be traffic control there at that point? What are you envisioning happening there?
Yeah, so far, NDOT hasn't opposed to us having full access from Stead, left in, right out, left out, right in, the full access. As they haven't posed any issue with that yet. The more of the concern is up at the interchange, specifically the southern off-ramp, on-ramp. And we're still working through the details on that, in terms of what the improvements at that interchange are.
When it was originally presented a couple of years ago, I know they were talking about storage units on the piece that's, I would say, north or west on that triangle piece. Your developer that you're representing, they don't own that piece, or the piece on the south end of that as well?
They do not own the piece on the west. They do own the piece on the south. They had requested that without them having more information as to what the site will be, that we show the site plan without it. And so the development on the west is owned by a different developer. We're working with them to try to get a better idea of what's going to go there as well. But for the time being, we're focused on that middle parcel there.
Can you speak towards what other franchisees you might consider besides Subway? You said it's up in the air.
Yeah, they don't have anybody in mind. And so at this time, they requested that we just remove it from the site plan for now.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, anything?
I do not.
Shane, Kazigi? No? Okay, sir, for the record, Corey Bond, I do have a question, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not exactly sure. Are we talking right on at the intersection of Virginia and Stead Boulevard?
No, I'll go ahead and step over and point it out.
And if you pointed this out and I missed it, I apologize.
No, on the site plan, it showed it, but it's hard to tell in this sort of view. So this
Thank
is
you.
our parcel here
Okay,
in the middle. It says proposed site, mixed use suburban for those on the call. Our access will be directly across from Matthew Street, which is, yes, right there. So it'll be right in line per NDOT
so
standards.
are you right next to the self-storage then?
The existing self-storage here?
Yeah,
No, there's a UPRR railroad.
right,
in
okay.
between, sort of, but there will not be any access between.
Gotcha, okay, all right. Thank you very much, sir, I appreciate that. Okay, any public questions? Seeing none,
Anyone on Zoom would like to give a question or have any questions? Seeing none at this time, Mr. Chair.
all right, sir, thank you very much for coming and for your presentation, and we wish you well.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, if I'm correct, which I think I am, we are on B 2.2. Correct.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Perfect. Yes, and we actually, the presenter is on Zoom, Mr. Ryan Sims.
okay,
Ryan, you should be able to unmute yourself. And then he can give us a little bit of background, regarding his request.
Sure. Good evening, board. Thanks for having me tonight. I apologize we don't have, or for the record, Ryan Sims, Axion Engineering, on behalf of the applicant. I apologize we don't have a presentation tonight. We just found out today that we were agendized for tonight, so a little last minute. Basically a little overview. This is a request for an extension of time on a approved tentative map. This site is kind of the triangle between Military and Lemon Valley Road, just south of the industrial building. It was approved for 268 townhome, or you can call it single family attached homes. We recorded a map for 160 some of them in February of 22. And by NRS standards, the tentative map would then have a 2-year window within which to record the next final map. NRS does provide for the approving body to grant an additional extension of 2 years on that per NRS standards. So that's what we're asking for, is just a 2-year time extension on an approved tentative map. I don't know if you're familiar with the site, but the first phase, the 160 plus units, the improvements are in. The developer expects to start constructing homes anytime. As with all housing, there's been a bit of a slowdown, but they have the roads and the stuff in the ground and expect to start building houses soon. So just not as fast as they expected at the beginning. So like I said, that's why we're a little late in getting the phase 2 designed and approved and need another 2 years within which to do that. So with that, that's all I have. So I'll entertain any questions or comments you guys have.
Okay, Ms.
Kathleen,
Egan.
Kathleen Egan, I actually have a question for the staff here. What is the regulating body that will approve this?
Planning commission. Yes,
The
ma'am.
planning commission, so it doesn't go to city council.
Not unless there's a,
It goes to planning commission and that's where they'll decide.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Souther,
No questions.
okay, Mr. White? No? Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, Ben Johnson for the record. Who's the builder for the homes?
It's Paradiso. And if you're not familiar, it's local builders, formerly, guys that were over at Barker Coleman. So if you're familiar with that name.
And then you say they were single family homes or?
Yeah, we have to call them townhomes, but it's basically single family attached. So think of a duplex type home, but you own the lot you're sitting on, but you have a 0 lot line shared with the neighbor.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Okay, any public? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Sims. Happy holidays and.
You
One
too.
second. Does anyone on Zoom have any questions for Mr. Sims? Seeing none at this time. Sorry, Mr.
No, that's all right. I apologize. As I said, thank you, Mr. Sims. Happy holidays and good luck with your project.
All right, you too, guys. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, item C is boards, commission, committee member reports, announcements. Anybody have anything? Seeing none, okay, future agenda items. Anybody have anything they would like to see for January? Okay.
No.
Okay, Corey Bond, I do. Did you have any luck reaching out to NV Energy?
Not yet, Mr.
Haven't heard that. Okay, and you will pursue that, please.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, and my last thing is public comment.
I think Mr. Souther had a,
Oh.
yes.
Oh,
Right,
I'm
I'll
sorry.
just-
I'm sorry.
I actually, I know we just heard from RTC and NDOT. Looking forward to getting maybe an update on Sky Vista and understanding what's happening there. I also feel like, as we go into winter, that we're still seeing a deficit on traffic control and the ability for people to get where they need to go in a timely manner and safe. So my concern is that they've started this winter project on northbound 395, narrowing lanes, moving traffic, and it's putting the lanes so close to the concrete barrier that we're gonna see a lot of ice slips and accidents that happen. And I wish that they would rethink that idea. It's good to get construction, but doing it at the right time is important.
100% agree. Okay. As I said, go ahead, ma'am, please identify yourself.
I'm Elliot, and I'll come up to the front
Okay.
so I can lean. Thank you for the Sky Vista intro.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second, ma'am. Pull up the timer. All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay, my name is Ann Elliott, and I'm a resident of Sky Vista, or perhaps we should say captive or prisoner. Those of you probably know of Sky Vista. A lot of people do. Anybody who knows me knows of it. And of course, everybody says, oh, you poor thing, and that should have never happened. And yes, that's correct. It was an ill-conceived, poorly managed, and it's overdue by a long shot. We're into the 16th month now. And as of August 9th, I've been trapped in my own subdivision. They closed my road. So I am the most unhappy of all the people. And the people who've been there the longest, those of us in actual Sky Vista, the homeowners association, are the ones that are being punished pretty much. because they've closed our one access that we have exactly to Sky Vista. We can no longer turn onto it. We have to back up and go out to Silver Lake, but then we can't really go use that because it's blocked as well going that way. So then we can take Stead and Silver Lake to Stead and go through the school zones and go that way. Or we can take the convoluted way through the newer apartments and get on Sky Vista. So last year has just been a living hell, but that's just, I'll state that. I used to be a proponent and advocate of RTC, not so much. And what I'd like to propose to this group is looking to the future. And when I was here at the last meeting, I think I was able to come in June. They were talking about strip malls or shopping centers. And rather than just have kind of the frumpy old strip malls of the 60s, I would prefer us to look towards what every other area in the city has, which is a more dynamic shopping mall. And people were saying, well, we'll put up a little strip mall for you folks, and we'll get a bakery in there and a dry cleaner. I don't know who uses dry cleaning anymore, but anyway, what I've seen over the last 50 years, when you have a good shopping center, you have an anchor core and you have the businesses that come up around it. I would just wish that this board would be the catalyst to suggest that for our area, we don't have that.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to give public comment? Anyone on Zoom at this time, if you would like to give public comment, please raise your hand. Using the bottom bar, raise hand, and I can allow you to speak. Saying that at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
There it is.
All right, so I'm just gonna close real quick with a couple chairman's comments. First of all, from myself, I would like to thank everybody for your time this year. Happy holidays. I will say this, it has been an honor to be your chairman. As we've stated tonight, we will not have the December meeting, so I will be in charge of the January meeting, and then my time is up, but I promise you I'm not going away. You guys will not get rid of me. So anyway, I hope I've been fair. I've tried the best I can, and if there were any hurt feelings, I apologize. It was never intentional. So with that, like I said, again, happy holidays, everybody, and we will see you in January, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Kathleen Egan, motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Ben Johnson, second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Thank you, everybody.
Thanksgiving and have Merry Christmas.